In today's video, we're going to talk about Avengers 5, Kang's Dynasty, and Antman and the Wasp: Quantumania, because recently, Jeff Loveness has done a bunch of interviews talking about what is going to happen with Kang, how he's approaching Avengers 5, what he thinks of Endgame, and also a bunch of Ant-Man 3 things. So it's very fascinating to actually hear what his ideas are for Avengers 5 without him actually ruining anything and spoiling anything. He's kind of given us a brief overview of his thought process, because obviously they're still writing the movie, and the movie's years away, literally years away. So it is fascinating what Jeff Loveness had to say. He's pretty well known in the industry. He's also worked on Rick and Morty, which will get him a lot of bonus points and brownie points with people, because that is a beloved show. So if you are new around here, make sure to subscribe to never miss any of the Marvel, DC, pop culture based content that we try to deliver on a daily basis. If you could, subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on, and also check us out on Instagram at Warstu to see the beautiful face behind the beautiful voice. And also check us out on Twitter at WarstuG. Right, let's get into this video. So recently, Jeff Loveness spoke with SFX magazine. The Avengers, Kang's Dynasty, and Ant-Man 3 writer gave his thoughts on Endgame's time heist mission and touched on how he prepped to bring Kang the Conqueror to the MCU in Ant-Man Quantumania, before opening up on his frustration with Endgame. Someone being critical of Endgame is fantastic. Loveness was asked whether he took a deep dive into Kang's comic book history to bring him to the MCU, to which his research was too deep, and specifically noted how he got way into Rama-Tut and Scarlet Centurion stuff. Too deep. I got way too deep into Rama-Tut and Scarlet Centurion stuff, trying to read my way through that and the Celestials with Mantis. That's the joy of a character. He is just this infinite snake eating infinite tails, a man literally at war against himself, which is an interesting take, because as we know, Kang is essentially Nathaniel Richards. There's going to be lots of variants of this character at the moment. We've only seen He Who Remains in Loki, and we've seen Kang the Conqueror, or the person who will become the Kang the Conqueror, in the Ant-Man 3 trailer. So it is fascinating where Kang is just at war with himself. Before you factor in how the Avengers try to go up against him, Kang's actually fighting against himself, which is a fascinating take and something I never really thought about. I guess that's because we haven't seen two Kang variants or Nathaniel variants on the screen together. The MCU writer spoke on how he finds himself a little bummed that Endgame included so much time travel, meaning Kang now has to be broader out into the multiverse, when his bread and butter has always been time hopping. Yeah, Kang can literally freeze time, reverse time, go back, forward, all that kind of stuff. And he does bring up a really good point. There was so much time travel stuff in Avengers Endgame. So whatever they're doing with Avengers 5 and Kang, and it is a multiversal saga, it can't always predominantly be time travel, because the audiences have already seen a variant of that. I haven't seen a time traveling character done with such intricacy and exploration. I'm a little bummed because Endgame did so much time travel. So you almost need to broaden him out a little bit too. Maybe broaden him out into the multiverse, a little bit more dimensionality of the character, the limitless freedom he has, while also being completely uprooted from his time and himself. Is it just going to all fall apart because another version of him can destroy it as well? What's the purpose of building Rome if you're going to burn it down the next day? Because they want to have their own Rome. Very, very interesting take. And the next bit I find really fascinating, because it's actually factually correct. So he took a bunch of stuff, a ton of stuff from the comics, but fans should still expect to throw a huge curveball. So they don't know what to expect. And this is 100% bang on. Exact same thing happened with the Infinity Gauntlet, Endgame. Everyone was expecting Adam Warlock to come and don the gauntlet. Everyone was expecting Death to get involved. But you need to change up the comic book stuff in the live action verse or the live action alliteration. Otherwise, the audience is going to know exactly what's coming. And then that makes it pointless to everyone and less enjoyment. Totally. Even if you're a huge comic book fan, you appreciate they put some comic book stuff in, but they do need to throw a huge curveball. Because if they were just going to follow Kang the Conqueror from the comic books, 100% you'd know exactly how everything ends. I certainly took a ton from the comics. But the joy of these movies is you also get to put some of yourself into it. You get to put a completely new spin. Because if you do 100% comic book adaptation, people know all the tricks and what to expect. You have to use that as a foundation and then throw a curveball. I've tried to lean into him being a more interesting character than people expect, hopefully. And that is freaking fantastic that the main writer, if not the only writer, I've not looked into the fact if there is any other writers, I believe he is the main writer, is the fact that he doesn't want you to know what's coming, but he's still going to respect the source material, just add things and change things, which I think is the best way of doing it. It's definitely what Marvel and the MCU have done throughout their whole history. One of the main factors that will come into play overall when people compare Endgame to Kang's Dynasty is realistically the villain, Kang, opposed to Thanos. So, the main difference that Jeff Loveness says is Kang's humility, with Thanos being a purple CGI guy from space. And the writer intends to make the difference clear by leaning into the fact that Kang is human above anything. And this is also something that Jonathan Majors has said in a bunch of interviews, is he wants to humanize Kang. So, Loveness said this, to me, it's all about the humanity. Obviously, Thanos is great, an iconic villain, but he's also a big purple CGI guy. He's an alien from outer space. The thing I really want to lean into is that Kang is a human being. Kang was also described as a very lonely character. As Loveless teased, the fans will see the humanity and even the vulnerability in him because he becomes the next Avengers level threat. And we presume Kang is also going to be one of the main villains, maybe not the overall villain, for Avengers Secret Wars. He went on to say this, Kang also a very lonely character. We're going to see a lot of him in a lot of different ways going forward. We already have. He Remains gave us a huge teaser at the end of Loki Season 1. We know we're going to see a bunch of different variants in Loki Season 2, and maybe even see some in Ant-Man 3. We never know. But I really wanted to introduce the humanity and even the vulnerability of this character before he gets to such an apocalyptic Avengers scale heights. Essentially saying before he comes the overall crazy big bad. Jeff Loveness then moved back to Thanos comparison, hyping up that Kang is almost this infinite Thanos, and teasing that this new villain could be compared to the Mad Titan on an exponential level. Kang is a top-tier A-list Avengers villain. What do you do when you feel you're not enough against that? How do you step up to face the challenge of this generation? Who is Thanos on an exponential level? He's almost the infinite Thanos. I think we're setting things up for a pretty dynamic story. And that's the end of the quote in terms of Jeff Loveness hyping up Kang. So he has revealed an awful lot of information about what is to come. And in a way, he's hyping and taming your expectations by saying, if you're a comic book fan, you don't really know everything you think you know about what Kang's going to do in the MCU variants, because the MCU isn't a comic book. It runs on its own stories that are founded and grounded based on comic book stories, but they are massively changed. Hence why he says, took a ton from the comics and then threw a freaking curveball at it. He could have changed a ton of stuff. We just don't know until we see Kang after Ant-Man 3, because the plot leak is real. But still, even though we haven't seen Ant-Man 3, Kang will be a very different villain that any of the Marvel Cinematic Universe heroes and villains have ever seen or faced before. So it's very fascinating what Jeff Loveness said. So let me know, what do you think about Jeff Loveness' comments? The fact that he brings up Scarlet Centurion and Ramatut, that basically confirms they will be essentially in the story at some point. We know in Season 2 of Loki, we're going to see different variants of Kang for sure. And from Ant-Man 3 ending to Kang's Dynasty starting, I think Jonathan Majors is going to cameo in a lot of different movies and TV shows, potentially. He's got to, because there is such a big time gap in terms of years between Ant-Man 3 and Kang's Dynasty releasing. It's scheduled for 2025, but realistically, it's probably going to be pushed to 2026. and then Secret Wars 2027, because there's so much to happen in between Ant-Man 3 and Kang's Dynasty. So much stuff has to happen before we get there, and Kang has to freaking conquer everything. Although a lot of people seem to think Ant-Man 3 is going to end and then Kang's Dynasty starts, in real time, we're still going to have to see every other movie in between that. So even if Ant-Man 3 does end, and that is the start of Kang's Dynasty when we watch Avengers 5, aka Kang's Dynasty, we still have to physically see all the movies, at least in between this, and some of the TV shows. If you're into TV shows, not everyone watches Disney Plus Marvel shows. I get it. I do get it. There is too many of them. So, also in the news, Jeff Loveness was essentially saying throughout this whole article on SFX magazine that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is essentially setting up the story for the next Avengers sequel, because Ant-Man 3 is essentially a pre-build for an Avengers movie. Yes, I'm building to the Avengers. I want it to feel like a generational struggle. Phase 4 felt like the birth of new characters, Loveness said. You're giving everyone a little bit of breath. You're broadening out the universe. You have fun Disney Plus shows. That's questionable. There are elevating characters, and now I think it's time to put the pedal to the gas again and really take all these new characters that we like and throw them into the fire. Questionable whether we like the new characters, but in time, we will learn to like them. So the likes of Miss Marvel, the likes of Shang-Chi, the likes of She-Hulk, they're all going to be thrown into the fire, is what he essentially said. And I do like it, the fact that he is kind of talking about Phase 4 having a point. Because even the biggest creators in the world all agree that it's somewhat felt disappointing, the overall Phase 4. But I am really looking forward to seeing the likes of Yelena, the new Black Widow. We've got America Chavez, we've got Shang-Chi, we've got the new Black Panther, Shuri, Letitia Wright, although she's technically not a new character. She was always there. We have the new Kate Bishop, aka the female Hawkeye. It is really setting the tone, acting as a sort of prequel. I guess you could call it a prequel to Kang's Dynasty. Loveness went on to say, Quantumania reveals the first iteration of Kang. Isn't that he who remains, though, really? The Thanos, a level threat whose variants waged a multiversal secret war. We're going to be seeing a lot of him in a lot of different ways going forward, Loveness teased. But I really wanted to introduce the humanity and even the vulnerability of this character before he goes on a apocalyptic level. So the final thing I want to touch upon on this video is the latest rumors for Loki, because that is Kang related. So in the latest news follows a prior claim that Jonathan Majors will be playing multiple variants of Kang in Loki Season 2, although it's technically Nathaniel Richards. The following information has come out. The source is credible, but also not credible. So according to industry insider Daniel Rickman, who is 100% on the money, if it's to do with trailers and promotion and stuff like that, but to do with actual factual information, I would say he's 50-50, but he's more reliable than most of Twitter scoopers. So on his Patreon, I would never pay for anyone's Patreon. This is on an article on Direct. It says this: Rickman revealed the Kang variant is an inventor in the past who's looking to buy stuff from people to affect the future. One variant of Kang in Loki Season 2 is an inventor in the past wanting to buy stuff from people to affect the future, and Loki is trying to stop him. He went on to say, when a Patreon user questioned Rickman as to whether the variant is Victor Timely, a version of Kang from the comics, Daniel responded, I don't know if it's him for sure, but likely. Victor Timely has been rumored to be part of this whole multiversal saga. Victor Timely is a variant of Nathaniel Richards, or Prime Kang, who after being defeated by the Avengers travels back in time to 1901 and forms the town of Timely, later known as Chronopolis. Interesting. Chronopolis eventually exists outside of time and serves as a crossroads between the past, present, and future. Ironically, the MCU has seamlessly been hinting at Chronopolis, or a version of it, for quite some time, as the city had a brief cameo in Ant-Man and the Wasp. A tiny rumor ahead of Ant-Man 3. If this rumor proves to be true, the question is just what the inventor version of Kang is looking to buy that will affect the future. Thanks to on-set photos, fans already know that Loki and Morbius will be visiting the 1970s. Not only that, Silver is stuck in the 70s working at McDonald's, but 1970 is when Iron Man, Captain America, time travel in Avengers Endgame took place to steal Pym particles. Oh, this plot, everything's linked. Of course it's linked. It's a conjunctive, connective story. Perhaps Ant-Man 3, Loki season will be more closely connected than fans have dared to dream of. If so, a Loki-centric post-credit scene just may be a top contender to follow Quantumania. What did we say in the most recent video, the post-credit one? That I heard Tom Hiddleston had a brief scene in Ant-Man 3. It's pretty cool that we're going to see multiple variances of Nathaniel Richards, aka Kang, within the MCU going forward. So yeah, cool. Really looking forward to Loki Season 2. So like always, guys, let us know, what do you think about the writer of Avengers 5 and Ant-Man 3's comments about what's going to happen with Kang going forward. So like always, guys, check us out on Instagram at Warstu. Check us out on Twitter at Warstu Day. And I'll catch you in another video, guys, very soon. Catch ya later.